Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this first ever TechnoLive live stream. I hope that everybody is keeping well and everybody is uh, staying safe during these rather uh, strange times that we're currently living in. So, as I said, welcome to this first ever TechnoLive live stream session. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dan, and I'm a delivery officer, or actually a senior ambassador who does some delivery officer work at our Bangor University hub in North Wales. And what I'm going to be doing today is giving just a little bit of a brief introduction as to what we're going to be doing during these TechnoLive sessions. And then from there, what I'm going to be doing is introducing you to our activity today, which is going to be on a virtual MicroBit. So we'll be running today's live stream from now until 5:30, and upon us completing the live stream, it should be available on our YouTube channel, which I'd imagine is where you're watching the live stream from now. So in the event that you maybe have to go off and have dinner or that something comes up, feel free to go back and take a look at the live stream again afterwards. And you'll be able to sort of catch up that way. But the purpose of these sessions is to have a little bit of a change to what we were doing previously from our from the Bangor hub. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be having different topics every week on a particular aspect of a STEM subject. And this week, like I said, our focus is going to be doing a little bit of coding through some through the BBC MicroBit. So I'm sure a lot of you might have come across the BBC MicroBit before, perhaps at school, or maybe even us from TechnoCamps have been to your school and you've had a go at them, had a go on them that way. But what we'll be doing today is we'll be having a look at the MicroBit, and we're going to be doing some programming to get our MicroBit to display a bit of a fireworks display. Now, our fireworks, our bonfire night this year, is probably going to be a little bit different to normal with coronavirus still with us. So what we thought was that we would try and do a little bit of a virtual firework display, but using a MicroBit. Now I'm going to be with you every single step of the way, so if you do need any help, what we would recommend that you do is if you navigate to the TechnoCamps website, you will find a link on there. If I navigate to the TechnoCamps website here, you will see that there is an option in the bottom right of the screen to chat with one of the delivery team. Now, if you want to lend, if you need a hand in anything that we're working on today, then feel free to contact us using this chat facility down here. And we will be monitoring the chat stream that's linked to. So if there is anything that you need a hand with, either myself or my colleague Joe will be able to assist you with whatever query that you have. Okay, so feel free to pop a message on there and we will do our best to help you. Like I said, I'll be going through things at a very sort of a nice slow pace so that we can all sort of work together on developing our little project. And then at the end of the session today, you can have a look at what I've produced, and then you can have a go during this session or even after this session at making your own version of what we've made today. So what we'll do now is we'll start today's activity, and remember, if there is anything that you need help with at any point during this live stream, just pop it in the chat facility that is on the TechnoCamp's website just down here, and we'll do our best to help you. So the first thing that I would like everybody to do is first of all navigate over to the microbit.org website. So you might be able to see that up in my URL bar here. So it's just microbit.org. If you type in MicroBit on Google, you should come across this website here. And once you've navigated to this website, I want you to click on Let's Code. Okay, so I'll just give everybody a chance to navigate over to the MicroBit website, and then we'll carry on in just a second. Okay, so hopefully everybody has managed to navigate over to the MicroBit website. So what we'll do now is navigate over to this Let's Code menu, which is in the navigation bar at the top of the screen here, and you'll be taken to this screen. Okay, so what we'll be using today is the Make Code editor. Okay, so the Make Code editor lets you program in lots and lots of different types of languages, and I'll show that to you later on. But for the purposes of today's session, we're just going to be programming using a block-based programming editor. So some of you might have come across block-based programming before in things like Scratch. So it's going to be very, very similar to Scratch is what we're going to be doing today, basically. But we'll be, instead of programming something in Scratch, we will be programming a MicroBit instead. So after you've clicked on the Let's Code menu, simply click on the Go to Make Code Editor button, which is just here. And you'll be brought to this page here, so hopefully you should all be able to see that now on my screen. And it is from here that we'll be creating our new project. Okay, so we will move on to that in just a second. I'll just let everybody get caught up with us first, and then we'll carry on to the next section. Okay. So hopefully everybody's managed to navigate over to this section here, which is our Make Code editor. So if you haven't been able to find it, if you typed in makecode.microbit.org into your URL bar, okay, along the top of your screen, you should be brought to this page. So it's just this link here. I know it might be a bit small on some of your screens, but it's makecode.microbit.org, and that's all in lowercase, okay, in case anybody needs to get to that specific section. So on this particular screen, as you will all see, there are lots and lots of different tutorials and lots of different things that you can do, and feel free to do these in your own time. Okay, if anybody is interested and wanting to do a little bit additional sort of programming outside of today's session, then feel free to have a look at some of these tutorials. But what I'd like you all to do today is click on New Project. Okay, and what will happen then is it will give you this box where it will ask you to give a name to your project. So what you name your project is up to you. Okay, it doesn't matter what you call it. So I'm going to call mine Fireworks Okay. And anything under this code options menu, you can just leave as blocks, JavaScript, and Python. So don't worry about changing anything there. You can leave that as it is, but just type in the name of your project. Again, it's completely up to you what you call your project. Normally, it's a good idea to give something what we call a meaningful name. So give your project a name that sort of resembles what it's going to be doing, essentially, what the purpose of your project is. So try and give it a name that kind of makes that would sort of make sense, so that when you look at it in future, you might go, oh yes, I know what that was. It was my fireworks project, or something like that. Okay, so try and give it a meaningful name. So once you've given your project a name, you can simply click on the Create button, and then you'll see that you'll be brought to this screen. Okay, so I'll leave everybody just a second to catch up, just to make sure we're all in the same place, and then we'll move on in just a second. Remember, if there is anything that you're stuck with at any point, to navigate back to the TechnoCamp's website, and you can chat with either myself or with my colleague Joe, who is also monitoring the chat session, the chat that we've got open, in case you do need any help with anything. Okay, so feel free to ask if you are having any problems. So I'll just leave this screen open for a second, just so that everybody can catch up, and then we'll start programming in just a second. Okay, so hopefully everybody's managed to navigate over to this page. Okay, so what we have here on the right hand side of our screen is our coding window. Okay, so this is where all of our different blocks, all of our different coding blocks are going to go. Now you can see that there are already 2 blocks at the top of the screen already. We can pop these away or throw them away, because we won't be needing them today. So we can click on those and we can drag them into the bin, which is here. Okay, and that will then remove those coding blocks. So we won't be needing those today. What we have on the left of the screen here are all of our different coding blocks. Okay, so we have things like our basic coding blocks, some input coding blocks. Okay, there's lots and lots of different types of coding blocks available. Okay, and we'll be using some of these today. So we won't be using all of them, but we'll be making use of some of them today. And then over on the far left hand side of the screen here, we have our virtual MicroBit. Okay, and this is what we're going to be programming today. So our virtual MicroBit, now a lot of places and a lot of schools, perhaps in some of your schools, there are physical, sort of real life microbits that you might have programmed in the past, or you might have your own microbit. But for the purposes of today's session, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be programming our own virtual microbit, which is this on the left hand side of the screen. Now, as a side note, if you do have your own microbit and you decide that you would like to download the program that you make today and put it onto your own microbit, if you have your own one at home, you can simply click on this download button, the bottom left of the screen here, and that will allow you to download your microbit program, and you'll be able to pop it onto your own microbit so that you can have a sort of a physical version of what we produce today. Okay. So, like I said at the start of the stream, we're going to be programming our MicroBit today to give its own little fireworks display. Now, as I said earlier, our bonfire night this year might not be the same as what it has been usually, because of things like the coronavirus and social distancing policies and things like that. So what we thought would be a good idea is if we had an opportunity to program our own MicroBit, or virtual MicroBit, to give its own little fireworks display that you can have at home. Okay. Now I'm going to be showing you how to create your own quite basic fireworks display, but you can go as creative, and you can be as creative as you would like to be. Okay, so it doesn't matter how you what sort of how you have your fireworks display. Okay, it's entirely up to you. So I'll just be showing you quite a basic method, but it's entirely up to you how you do it. So what we're going to be doing today is building up what's known as an algorithm. Okay, now an algorithm is very, very important in computer programming, because what an algorithm does is it's essentially a sequence of instructions. Okay, and we, as the programmers, need to tell our computers, or in this case our MicroBit, which you could think of as a little mini computer in itself, we need to tell it what to do. Okay, so the computer is very, very clever, and it can do lots and lots and lots of different things, but we need to be able to tell it what to do. Okay, we have to give it its instructions, and this is known as an algorithm. So what we'll be making today is a very, very simple algorithm that can build up our that we could use to build up our program, essentially. Okay, so without further ado, we will get started on today's exercise. So the first thing that we need to be able to tell our MicroBit is what it needs to do to start, essentially. So the program needs to start in some way, and we need to tell our MicroBit how it knows that it needs to start its running the code. Now there are lots of options that we can use to do this. We could use the forever block, which we'll come back to in a little while. We can use the onStart block here, which is essentially where when we click on this green triangle over here, the code will instantly start running on our virtual MicroBit. Okay, but I thought it would be a nice idea for, instead of having the code running currently forever, or where we have to actually press the button to start the program, what I thought we would use is actually something from the input section, where we can use this block here, onShake. Now you can use onShake, which means that when you shake your MicroBit, the code will start running. Or if you wanted to, you could use this on button A pressed block. So we can change that to being button B or A and B pressed together, and that will essentially mean that we either have to press the A button or the B button, or the two of them together, to get our code to run. But I thought it would be a nice idea today that if we use the onShake block. Okay, so this means that in real life, if we shook our MicroBit, it would start to run the code. With this virtual MicroBit, there is actually a button that simulates the shaking of the MicroBit, okay, as we'll see in a second. But if you're downloading it onto your own MicroBit, when you shake your MicroBit, it will then run the code. So we're going to be using this onShake block, okay? Now, if I just make the MicroBit slightly bigger for a second, we might be able to see these little grey rectangles that sort of run, well, there's 5 across and 5 up, so there's these 25 little greyed out rectangles. Okay, these are our MicroBit LEDs. Okay, and what this means, what these are, is little lights. Okay, so LEDs are little lights that are on our MicroBit, and this is what we're going to be using today to show off our fireworks display. So we'll be having all of these little LEDs light up, and they will be our little fireworks display for our MicroBit. Okay. So, like I said, we're going to be using the on-shake block. So I'll zoom in a little bit just so that it's a little bit bigger for you all to see. And again, there are lots of different options that you can select for the way in which your MicroBit reacts to different circumstances, different scenarios, but we'll be making use of the shake one this afternoon. So the first thing that we need to do then is we need to go to our basic menu, and we need to use this Show LEDs block. Now, what the Show LEDs block does is, as the name suggests, is we can choose which ones of the LEDs we would like to have lit up at a particular time. Now, what we need to do today is simulate those LEDs displaying its own sort of little fireworks display. Okay? So, because we're building up an algorithm, if I was to just have all of my LEDs on at the same time, something like that, maybe, this wouldn't really be a very good fireworks display, because if we had all of them flashing on at once, it wouldn't really accurately resemble the way that fireworks shoot up into the sky and then instantly explode once they've reached a certain height. So what we need to do is we need to use lots and lots of these Show LED blocks to simulate how the fireworks maybe shoot up into the sky and then explode to show all of the lovely colours and patterns. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to just have one single LED on display. And that's going to be this little one at the bottom here. And then I need to have my MicroBit wait a few seconds, or a second, before it then proceeds to show the next set of LEDs. And we can do this by going again to our basic menu, and we can choose this pause millisecond 100 block. Now, this means that our MicroBit is going to wait for 100 milliseconds before it starts showing the next set of LEDs. Now, one of the really useful tools that you can have in MakeCode is, instead of you having to go through lots of menus to find a specific block, if you know that you need to reuse a block, you can simply right click on it and click the duplicate button. Okay? And what that will then do is it will duplicate the block that we have at the top of the screen here. So now I'm going to say that for my second set of LEDs, I want to show the next one up to kind of simulate. So what we're doing here is we're simulating that firework being launched into the sky. So if you picture these top set of blocks here as being the sky, okay, and these bottom blocks here as being or bottom LEDs here as being the ground, what we want to do is we want to have our firework shoot up into the sky, and then we will have the fireworks displaying in the sky. So once it's shown the next part, I want it to then pause again for another 100 milliseconds, and again I can do that by right clicking on the block and clicking that duplicate button. Okay. If you do make a mistake and you accidentally place the wrong block in the wrong place, or if you wanted to have the blocks in a different place, you could either drag them out and reposition them, or you can click on the delete block button, and you can see then that it simply deletes it from the screen. Or of course you could just click on it and drag it to the bin on the left of the screen here. Okay. So I'm just going to pop those back to where they were before. So that is now our second set of LEDs displayed. So what we need to do now is essentially we need to keep repeating this code, and we need to have our fireworks display actually displayed in the sky. So I'm going to again duplicate my LEDs. I'm going to have another launch section. Again, I'd like the MicroBit to pause. You can alter how long the pause period is. Okay, it's entirely up to you. So I've got 100 milliseconds. It could be a second or 2 seconds or 5 seconds. Again, these are of course the same thing, but if you wanted to have it displayed as a second or 2 seconds to make it easier, that's fine. And then once again, I'm duplicating the LEDs. Now in this case, what I might want to have happen is I might start having its sort of launch trail disappear. Actually no, instead of doing that, let's start having the fireworks exploding in the sky. So I might do something like I don't know, let's just say something like that. Okay, and then maybe in the next block, so again I'll duplicate the pause. Maybe we'll have something like that. Okay, so what we have here, again, you know, that's just a very, very basic example. Okay, there are lots of things that you could do, lots of examples of what you could do, but what we have here is a very, very basic algorithm. Okay, so once again, an algorithm, a sequence of instructions that shows us or that's telling our little computer what it needs to do. Okay, so if we just run through once again what this algorithm is doing, we're saying that when the MicroBit is shaken, we want it to show the LEDs, or in this case 1 LED. Then it's going to pause for 100 milliseconds. Then it's going to show the second set of LEDs, pause again, show the next set of LEDs, pause again, show the next set of LEDs, pause again, and then show the next set of LEDs. And what that's doing, again, like I said, is it's building up this sequence of instructions that is now telling our virtual MicroBit, or your physical MicroBit if you choose to download it, what it needs to do. So, if I want to now show this code working, I can go over to the left-hand side of my screen here. It's sometimes nice to view the MicroBit in full screen, so I can do that by clicking on the Launch in Full Screen button here, which is this square with the little lines around it. And that will then display our MicroBit sort of in the full screen window, so that we can see things a little bit more clearly. So what I've got here is my MicroBit. Now if I hit the play button for Start the Simulator, you can see that my MicroBit sort of lights up. And you can see here now that if I hit the shake button, you can see that my fireworks display, my very basic fireworks display, is launching. Okay. Now it could be that you want your fireworks to maybe disappear at the end of the fireworks display, so we can program that in a second. Now, like I said, with the MicroBit, if you want to simulate the shaking of the MicroBit when you're using a virtual one, you can just hit the shake button that appears when you start running the program, and it will then allow you to virtually shake your MicroBit. Okay. If you want to stop the simulation or stop the code from running, you can just hit the Stop the Simulator button, and you can see then that the MicroBit goes back to being grey, and then you can't run the code any further. Okay, so I'll make this smaller again. So that was our virtual MicroBit setup there. Okay, now like I said, we might decide that we want to extend our code a little bit by having the fireworks disappear after the code has ended. So to do that, again, we can just say duplicate to have our pause, and then we can just duplicate the show LEDs block and just make the LEDs switch off, essentially. So again, now if I run this code, I shake the MicroBit, you can see that after I've shaken them, after the code is finished, the fireworks disappear from the screen like they would in real life. I'm just going to stop that simulation. So that is our virtual MicroBit, okay, that we have on the screen here, and it's often worth, even if you are going to download this program to your own MicroBit, it is sometimes a good idea to test that your code is working by running it in the simulator first, okay, in the virtual MicroBit, because otherwise you could find that you've downloaded the code and you try and run it and it doesn't actually work as intended. So it's always a good idea to test your code to make sure that it works properly before you then move on to before you then go on to actually downloading it and running it officially. Now there are also, remember, if you do click on the wrong button or add the wrong block of code, as well as being able to delete it, you can use these undo and redo buttons down here. Okay. So this is essentially, like I said, our basic algorithm. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give everybody a couple of minutes. Okay, so again, feel free to skip ahead if you're watching this if you're re-watching this after the live stream. But what I'm going to do now is give everybody a few minutes to build up their own fireworks display if you haven't been following along already. I'll zoom out a little bit just so that you can see a bit more of the code. I will leave that on the screen for everybody to see. And do remember that if you have any questions, feel free to go on to the Technocamp's website, choose to chat with one of the delivery team. Like I said, myself and my colleague Joe will be watching the chats to make sure that in case anybody needs a hand. Okay, so feel free to go on to there to if you need any help, and we'll be able to assist you as best we can. But what we'll do in the meantime is I'll let everybody carry on with their fireworks display for a couple of minutes, and then we'll come back in a little while and we'll look at a few more features that we could maybe add to our code to make it a little bit more efficient. Okay, so I'll leave everybody to do that for a few minutes, and we'll come back in a little while. Okay, so hopefully everybody's managed to have a chance now to have a go at programming their own fireworks display. Before we go on to looking at different ways in which we can make our code a little bit more efficient, I just thought I'd show you some of the changes that I was making for those of you who maybe haven't noticed yet. So one of the things that I have done is I've actually changed the pause time. So I've halved the pause time. So you don't have to choose one of these options, you see. You can actually manually input a time into this box. So like I said, I've put in, you can just click on the box, press backspace, and then I've put, in this case 50. And essentially what I've done there is I've halved the time in which the LED, between each LED gap, so that way it essentially looks a little bit more like a firework display would, where you get that really rapid sort of shooting up speed from the fireworks as they get launched, and then they explode in the sky. So that's one change that I've made. And then down at the bottom of my code, I've also used this show icon block, which you'll be able to find under basic, and there are a few blocks in here which you might find useful for when you're programming your fireworks display. So you might want to use something like show icon. There are lots of different icons that you can use, so I've used this one that resembles a chessboard here, because it sort of looks like how a fireworks display would look when it explodes. So if we have a look at it on here, you'll see it sort of looks a little bit like when a fireworks display goes off. You kind of get that explosion at the end there. So that's one potential thing that you could use. Another thing that you could maybe use as well is the show string block. So I will leave it as hello. Now, it would be quite a cool firework if you could get it to spell out a word like this, but of course the whole point is for us to be as creative as possible. So it might be that if we run this, there are fireworks display, and then it actually prints out some text. Now, it'd be quite cool if a fireworks display could do that sort of thing, but like I said, it's about being as creative as possible. So what you include in your fireworks display is completely up to you. Okay. So before we, like I said, so there's one more thing I just wanted to mention before we look at different ways that we can make our code a bit more efficient. And one of those things that we can do is we can actually do what's known as comments on our code. Okay. Now, if, for an example, you were working on a little project like this and you couldn't remember what a certain block does, so let's just say we can't remember what the pause block does. I know in this case it's probably quite obvious, but let's say there is a specific block, and you just can't remember what the point of it does, or you think that you might forget what it does. What you can do is you can right click on a block and click on this add comment button, okay, from the menu, and you'll see then that you get like this little tiny post-it note, okay, and you can adjust the size of it and things like that, and you can move it around and place it in different places, and you can type in here exactly what that specific bit of code is for. So we can just say pauses before moving on to the next block. Okay, and then what this means now is if you were to show this code to somebody, or if you come back to it maybe in a few months and you think, oh, I just can't remember what this specific block is for, you can click on your little comment to see your little post-it note, and you can see that what it does is it you've written a comment to remind yourself what the purpose of that little block is. So in this case, it pauses before moving on to the next block. So if you wanted to delete that, you can just press the little bin symbol here, and then that will just simply remove the comment altogether. Okay, and the commenting code or comment is very, very important in when you're doing computer programming, because it can help you, like I said, to remember what the purpose of specific code is. So you won't have that. For example, you might, if you do forget when you come back to your program, or if you want somebody else to read your program, it could be that that person who's reading your program has never seen it before, or they're not familiar with what you're doing. And so if you want to try and explain to somebody what your code is doing, you can use those little comments, and they are very, very helpful to remind you what the purpose of the code is. Okay, so getting back to how we can make our code a little bit more efficient, there is this thing in computer programming known as looping, okay, and using loops. Now, there are lots and lots of different types of loops that we can use, so we'll cover 2 of them today, okay? But the purpose of loops is that we can get our code to keep repeating itself over and over and over again, either a specified number of times or forever. Okay, so we can get our code to keep repeating itself. So at the moment, when I'm running my program, every time I want to see my fireworks display, I have to click the shake button. Okay, or if this was on my real MicroBit, I would have to keep shaking the MicroBit every single time I want to see my fireworks display run. Now, of course, that's fine, but we could make this a little bit more efficient by using one of these loops. Okay, so on the left of the screen here, we have our loops menu, and if you open that up, you can see that there are lots and lots of different types of loop that we can use, and there are lots of different sort of blocks. The one that we're going to be looking at today is this repeat 4 times loop, okay, block. I'll zoom in a little bit so that we can see it. So it's this repeat 4 times do block. Now, what this block does is, as the name suggests, everything that's inside of this do section will get repeated the number of times that you've told it to at the top here. And you can change this value to being whatever you like. So for an example, I will set it to being 5. Okay? Now, what you can do is you can pop this repeat 5 times block into your onShake block. Now make sure that it does go into the onShake block so that it looks like this, okay? So that everything that's inside of onShake is contained inside of this repeat 5 times block. So it kind of looks like that, okay? So all of the blue blocks are inside of the green blocks, and the green block is inside of the pink block, okay? And this is known as nesting. So we are nesting our code, okay? Now what this code is essentially saying to us now is, yes, we still have to shake our MicroBit to start running the code, okay? However, we can have it run 5 times without having to shake the MicroBit again. So it stops us from having to keep clicking on shake every single time that we want to have our code, every time we want to have our code run. So if I go back to my MicroBit simulator and I hit the play button and I go to shake, we can see now that the code runs once, and then it runs again, and it will run for a total of 5 different 5 times. Okay, it will go through it 5 different times for the 5 different loops that we have programmed it to do. And you can see now that after 5 times it stops. So it'll only run through them 5 separate times, and then it will stop. And if we want to do it again, we would have to hit that shake button one more time, and then it will keep running the code over and over and over. Now there are lots, like I said, of different types of loops. Another example of a loop, which we will look at now, is the forever loop. Now the forever loop you can find inside of Basic, and you can see this coding block here called forever. Okay, we can pop that in there. Now for the forever block to work, you don't actually need to have the on-shake or repeat blocks. Okay, you can actually just take all of these, put them into here. And if I hit start on my MicroBit now, this code is just going to keep on running forever and ever and ever, because there is no reason for it to stop. There is no condition that's being changed that's saying that the code should stop running, because it's been told that it needs to run forever and ever and ever. Okay, and you can see that it's just keeping on going, it's not stopping, and it's just going to keep doing that forever until we tell it to stop. Okay, so that's another example of a type of loop that you can use, which will keep your code running forever and ever and ever. Now, of course, you don't have to do that. You can have it like I have and just have it run for a total of 5 times. And what this repeat 5 times at the top here is like I said earlier, it's an example of what's known as a condition. Okay, so a condition is essentially where our computer, or in this case our MicroBit, will check every time this loop runs. It will check to see if that condition is still true. Okay, and if the condition is still true, it will run the code again, and it will keep on running that code until the condition is no longer true. So in this case, the condition is that the code can only run 5 times, and after it's run 5 times, it then has to stop running, and the program will then stop. Okay, it will just stop the whole code, the whole program will stop, and then it will no longer run, and that's known as a condition. Okay, so this is an example of a condition, and this is an example of, again, like I said, a loop. Now, as I said earlier as well, there are lots of different types of loop that we can use. There's a for loop, which is very, very similar to a repeat block. Okay, and there's also a while loop, which is again an example of a loop which runs off of a condition. So this while true means that the code will just keep running forever until unless we were to specify a condition that said that the code could be turned to false, and in which case it would then stop running. So I know that sounds a little bit complicated, and it's not anything that you need to worry about now, because we will be looking at loops in future TechnoLive sessions again. Okay, so don't worry if you're not too sure on what that means. If you aren't sure, and you want to just sort of remind yourself what each block of code means, remember that you can still comment your code. So in this example, I would say this is a loop which will repeat my code 5 times and then stop. And I could say something like the number 5, or I could say something like repeat 5 times, whoops, is an example of a condition. Okay, so if you wanted to remind yourself that that's an example of a condition, you could add a comment, little comment, and that will then remind you that this is an example of a condition. Okay? So I hope that everybody managed to follow along with that, and I hope that that made sense to everybody. Remember, if anybody does have any questions before we wrap the session up today, that they can that you can go onto the TechnoCamps website, and you can chat with either myself or Joe, and we're happy to take any questions that you have. Remember as well that this session will be uploaded as a recording, hopefully, onto the TechnoCamps website, meaning that you should be able to watch it back. So if there's anything that you weren't sure of, or if there's anything that you wanted to go back to because you think, oh, I just wanted a little bit more clarification on what that meant, or I wasn't too sure what such and such meant, you can go back and you can re-watch this session again, and that will then let you have a bit of a recap type thing, and you can watch it as many times as you like, and that of course is on our YouTube channel. Before we finish today's session, I will point out this menu at the top of the screen here. Now, this certainly isn't something that you need to worry about, okay, unless you are a little bit more of a familiar computer programmer and you would like to see the way that this code that we have on the screen here looks in different programming languages. Okay, you can have a look at how this would run in JavaScript. Okay, again, don't worry about this because it does look a little bit confusing. Okay, so don't worry. And again, you can also look at it in Python. So this is another example of a different type of programming language that you can use. Now, for these sessions, we will mainly be looking for now at block-based programming, which is what we've been doing today. But if you were interested in looking at other programming languages, the MakeCode editor, which is what we've been using today, does let you take a look at JavaScript and Python as well. So feel free to take a look at some other programming languages if you're interested. So before we wrap up today, I'll just give you a little bit of a taster as to what we'll be doing during next week's session. So at the same time next week, so these live streams will be running every week now up until Christmas. Okay, so up until the school Christmas holidays. So I will be running my live stream session every Tuesday between 4:30 and 5:30. And my colleague Jack from TechnoCamp Swansea will be running his live streams between 4:30 and 5:30 on a Thursday. So feel free to join into both of our sessions if you like. Okay. During the session next week, we will be having a look at some hour of code activities, and we'll be having a look at some Minecraft coding tutorials. Okay, so we'll be having a look at programming that's somewhat similar to what we've been doing today. Okay, so we'll be using block-based programming, and we'll be once again building up an algorithm, building up that sequence of instructions in order to program our Minecraft character to move through a bit of a virtual world. Okay, so thank you very much everybody for joining in today, or for those of you who are watching this back, thank you very much for watching. If, remember, in future live streams you do have any questions during the hour session, remember that you can use the TechnoCamps website to communicate with us, and we'll do our best to answer any questions that you have. But in the meantime, thank you again very much for joining. We will finish up here for today, and I look forward to seeing you all in next week's live stream. So again, thank you very much, and I will see you all next week.